There is a moment in every long-term relationship that almost nobody talks about. It doesn't happen during a fight. It doesn't happen during a hard season. It happens on an ordinary night in an ordinary bed when one partner reaches out and the other is already asleep, or turned away, or just not there in the way they used to be. And something registers. Not consciously maybe, but somewhere deep in the body, in the nervous system that has been keeping track even when the mind wasn't. Something notices. The touching stopped. Not dramatically, not all at once. It happened the way most things in long-term relationships happen. Gradually, quietly, without announcement. A hand that used to find yours across the console of the car. A kiss that used to be real instead of reflexive. A body that used to turn toward you in sleep that now faces the wall. When did that change? More importantly, what does it mean? Because here is what most couples don't know. Physical touch in a relationship is not just affection. It is not just comfort. According to neuroscience and relationship psychology, physical touch is one of the most precise indicators of the emotional state of a relationship. A real-time signal of connection, safety, trust, and desire. When couples stop touching, the body is communicating something the mouth has not yet found words for. And today on The Connection Theory, we are going to find out exactly what it is saying. There is a language that exists between two people in love that has nothing to do with words. It is spoken in the brush of a hand across a shoulder, in the instinctive reach for someone's fingers in a dark movie theater, in the weight of a body leaning into yours on a couch at the end of a long day, in the warmth of a forehead pressed against another forehead, in a moment when words would be too small for what needs to be said. This is the language of touch. And in the early stages of romantic love, most couples speak it constantly, fluidly, naturally, without thinking. Touch is the primary medium through which new lovers communicate everything that language cannot hold. Desire, safety, belonging, wonder, tenderness. But something happens in long-term relationships. Something quiet. Something that most couples don't notice until it has already been absent for a very long time. The language of touch goes silent. Not in a single moment, not through a conscious decision, but through a slow, almost imperceptible withdrawal. A gradual reduction in the frequency, the spontaneity, and the meaning of physical contact between two people who still love each other. And when it goes silent, the relationship begins to communicate through absence, through the empty space between two bodies in a bed, through the handshake distance that appears in places where there was once closeness, through the reflexive kiss goodbye that has lost every trace of what it once meant. Today on The Connection Theory, we are going inside one of the most important and least discussed dynamics in intimate relationships. The psychology of why couples stop touching, what it reveals about the state of the relationship, and what it takes to restore the physical language of love. I'm Dr. Alex Morgan, and this conversation might be one of the most important ones your relationship has ever had. Let's start with something that most people fundamentally misunderstand about physical touch in relationships. Touch is not a reward for emotional closeness. Touch is not something that naturally follows from feeling connected. Touch is actually one of the primary mechanisms through which emotional closeness is created and maintained. This distinction matters enormously because when couples stop touching, they almost always explain it the same way. We stopped touching because we became emotionally distant, as if the emotional distance came first and the touch withdrawal followed. But the research tells a more complicated and more important story. Dr. Tiffany Field at the Touch Research Institute at the University of Miami, one of the world's leading researchers on the psychology and neuroscience of human touch, has spent decades documenting what happens to human beings when they are touch deprived. And what she found applies directly to intimate relationships. Touch deprivation doesn't just follow emotional distance, it actively creates and accelerates it. When physical contact between partners decreases, a cascade of neurobiological events is set in motion. Oxytocin levels drop, the hormone most associated with bonding, trust, and felt safety between two people begins to decline. Without the regular oxytocin release triggered by physical contact, the nervous system of each partner begins to register the relationship as slightly less safe, slightly less certain, slightly more alone. Neither partner consciously experiences this as a neurological event. They experience it as a feeling, a vague, ambient feeling that something in the relationship has shifted, that a warmth that used to be present is somehow less present, that the person they are with, though nothing dramatic has happened, feels slightly less like home than they used to. This is the hidden psychology behind touch withdrawal. It creates the very emotional distance that couples assume caused it, which means couples who are waiting to feel emotionally close before they start touching again are waiting for something that will not come on its own. The closeness follows the touch, not the other way around. But understanding why couples stop touching in the first place requires going deeper into the psychology of emotional safety, into the specific ways that hurt, disconnection, and unspoken resentment settle into the body and reshape the physical space between two people. The human nervous system is extraordinarily sophisticated in ways that most people never think about. It is not just processing conscious thoughts and deliberate decisions. It is constantly, automatically, beneath the level of awareness, scanning the environment for signals of safety and threat, for cues that tell it whether this situation, this person, this relationship is safe to open toward, or whether it should begin to protect itself. Psychologist Stephen Porges, in his polyvagal theory, describes this as the neuroception of safety and danger. The nervous system, he explains, is always assessing, not through conscious thought, but through a deep, automatic, biological process, whether the people around us are safe to be close to. In a relationship where both partners feel genuinely safe, emotionally responsive to each other, reliably present, fundamentally trustworthy, the nervous system opens. It relaxes its vigilance. It allows closeness. It reaches toward rather than away from physical contact. But in a relationship where hurt has accumulated, where bids for connection have been ignored, where criticism has become more common than warmth, where one or both partners carry unspoken resentments or unhealed wounds, the nervous system does something very specific. It closes. Not in a dramatic, conscious way, but in a quiet, protective, biological way. The body begins to subtly orient away from the source of perceived threat. The instinct toward physical closeness is suppressed. Touch starts to feel uncomfortable, not because the love is gone, but because the safety is uncertain. This is why couples in emotionally strained relationships often describe touch as feeling awkward, forced, somehow wrong in a way they can't fully articulate. They are not imagining it. Their nervous systems are responding accurately to the emotional environment of the relationship. The body knows things that the conscious mind hasn't admitted yet. And this is where it gets really important. Because the nervous system's withdrawal from touch is protective, it is not permanent. It is not a verdict. It is a symptom. A signal from the deepest biological layer of a human being that the emotional safety of the relationship needs attention. The body is not lying. The body is not broken. The body is communicating with extraordinary precision the current emotional temperature of the relationship. The question is whether the couple is listening. There is another layer to this psychology that goes even deeper, and it begins long before the current relationship. Every adult who enters a romantic partnership brings with them a nervous system that was shaped by their earliest experiences of physical closeness and emotional safety, by the quality of the touch and the emotional attunement they received in childhood from their primary caregivers. Dr. John Bowlby and later Mary Ainsworth established through decades of research that these early experiences create what they called attachment styles, deep, largely unconscious templates for how safe, available, and responsive we expect the people we love to be. And these attachment styles have a profound and specific influence on how we relate to physical touch in adult romantic relationships. People with anxious attachment, who learned early that love was inconsistent, that closeness could be withdrawn without warning, often experience a complicated relationship with physical touch in their adult partnerships. They crave it intensely. They need it as reassurance. But they may also become hypervigilant to changes in their partner's physical availability, interpreting a slight reduction in touch as a sign of impending abandonment. Their need for touch becomes loaded with anxiety rather than pure connection. People with avoidant attachment who learned early that emotional needs were best managed alone, that dependence was unsafe, that closeness came with costs, often experience physical touch as threatening rather than soothing. In long-term relationships, they may unconsciously create physical distance as a way of managing the vulnerability that closeness triggers. They may genuinely not understand why their partner needs so much physical contact because in their nervous system, that need was long ago learned to be suppressed. And when an anxious attacher and an avoidant attacher are in a relationship together, which is one of the most common pairings in adult relationships, the touch dynamic becomes a living expression of their deepest attachment wounds. The anxious partner reaches, the avoidant partner withdraws. The anxious partner reaches more urgently, the avoidant partner withdraws further. Until both are exhausted, both are convinced the other doesn't care, and the physical distance between them has become so familiar it feels like the truth of the relationship. It is not the truth. It is the wound. Understanding this, truly understanding it, changes everything about how couples interpret their physical disconnection. It transforms it from evidence of incompatibility or lack of love into a window into the nervous system histories of two people who both deserve to feel safe, who both, underneath their protective strategies, want nothing more than to be truly close. Now let's get practical. Because psychological understanding only becomes useful when it helps you see clearly what is happening and what to do differently, there are 4 specific mistakes that couples make when touch starts to disappear from their relationship. Mistake 1. Treating touch as a barometer instead of a tool. The most common mistake couples make is treating physical touch as a symptom of relationship health rather than a driver of it. They wait to feel emotionally connected before they touch. They withhold touch as an unconscious expression of distance or resentment. They treat the absence of touch as evidence that something is deeply wrong, and then use that evidence as justification for touching even less. This creates a self-reinforcing cycle of physical withdrawal that is entirely disconnected from the actual love both partners still feel. The research is unambiguous on this. Touch does not follow emotional closeness in relationships. Touch creates it. Couples who deliberately maintain and restore physical contact, even when it initially feels awkward, even in the middle of emotional distance, consistently report faster reconnection and higher relationship satisfaction than couples who wait for the feeling to return first. Touch is not the reward. Touch is the medicine. Mistake 2, sexualizing all physical contact. This mistake is particularly common in relationships where physical intimacy has decreased. When non-sexual touch disappears from a relationship, when there is no longer casual physical affection, no spontaneous contact, no touch for the pure sake of connection rather than desire. Any touch that does happen becomes loaded with sexual expectation. And this creates a painful dynamic. One partner reaches out with a simple gesture of affection, a hand on a back, a hug, a moment of closeness, and the other immediately interprets it as a sexual advance and either responds with that expectation or withdraws to avoid it. The result is that both partners stop initiating even non-sexual touch because every touch has become complicated. Every touch has a subtext. Couples who successfully restore physical connection almost always do so by first deliberately rebuilding non-sexual touch. The casual, affectionate, low-stakes physical contact that communicates, "I like being near you. I find comfort in your presence. I want to be close to you for no reason other than that." Mistake 3, interpreting withdrawal as rejection. When a partner withdraws from physical touch, pulls back from a hug, doesn't reach out and sleep, becomes less physically initiating, the natural human interpretation is personal rejection. They don't want me. They are not attracted to me anymore. I have somehow become undesirable to them. This interpretation, while completely understandable, is almost always incorrect. Physical withdrawal is almost never about rejection of the person. It is almost always about a nervous system that doesn't currently feel safe enough to be open, about unresolved emotional pain that has settled into the body, about stress, exhaustion, or disconnection that has made physical closeness feel inaccessible rather than undesirable. When partners interpret withdrawal as personal rejection, they typically respond in one of two ways. They either pursue physical connection more desperately, which increases the pressure on the withdrawing partner and accelerates their withdrawal, or they stop reaching out entirely, which the withdrawing partner often misinterprets as confirmation that the pursuer has stopped caring. Neither response heals the disconnection. Both responses deepen it. Mistake 4. Waiting for the other person to reach first. This may be the simplest and most destructive mistake of all. When physical touch has decreased in a relationship, both partners are often waiting, consciously or not, for the other person to reach first, to initiate, to be the one who bridges the distance. Both are waiting because both are protecting themselves from the vulnerability of reaching out and not having that reach met. Both are protecting themselves from what feels like the most exposing act in an uncertain relationship. I want to be close to you. I am going to show you that even though I'm not sure you want me right now. Both partners wait, and in the waiting, the distance grows. The weeks become months. The months accumulate into a physical relationship that has become so thin that both partners have begun to wonder if it can ever be restored. It can, but someone has to reach first. The disappearance of touch in long-term relationships is not happening in a cultural vacuum. Modern life has created specific conditions that make sustained physical intimacy harder than it has ever been. Consider the physical environment of a modern American couple's life. They wake up to separate alarms on separate phones. They spend their days in environments, offices, cars, screens that are fundamentally touch deprived. They come home exhausted. They spend their evenings on separate devices. They go to bed at different times. And somewhere in all of that, the moments that used to naturally generate physical contact have been quietly eliminated. The morning rush leaves no room for lingering. The evening commute creates tension rather than warmth. The phones in hand create a physical barrier, a literal object between two bodies that might otherwise lean toward each other. But there is something else happening beneath the surface of modern life that is even more significant. We are living through what researchers are calling a touch epidemic, a widespread culture-level reduction in casual physical contact between human beings. Americans touch each other less than almost any other culture in the world. We are physically hyper-vigilant, trained by social norms to maintain appropriate distance, to avoid contact that might be unwanted, to manage our physical presence carefully in almost every social context. This cultural touch deprivation doesn't stop at the front door of the home. It follows couples inside. It shapes the nervous system's relationship with physical contact in ways that make spontaneous, casual, non-sexual touch feel increasingly unnatural, even between two people who love each other. And then add to this the role of technology. Research from the University of Essex found that the mere presence of a smartphone on a table between two people, even if neither is using it, measurably reduces the quality of their conversation, the depth of their connection, and their empathy toward each other. Now imagine that smartphone not on the table, but in each person's hand. Now imagine that being the default physical posture of your evenings together. Hands that might have been free to find each other are occupied. Bodies that might have leaned together are each oriented toward a separate screen. The physical posture of modern couple life is structurally a posture of mutual withdrawal. This is not a relationship failure. It is a design failure. The environments and habits of modern life were not designed with physical intimacy in mind, and couples who want to maintain that intimacy have to actively, deliberately design it back in. I want to be honest with you about something. Restoring physical intimacy in a relationship where it has been absent for a significant period of time is not as simple as deciding to touch more. If the withdrawal of touch has been driven by unresolved emotional pain, by accumulated hurt, unspoken resentments, attachment wounds, or a pattern of emotional disconnection, then attempting to restore physical contact without addressing those underlying dynamics will feel hollow at best and re-traumatizing at worst. The body does not lie. If the emotional safety is not present, the touch will feel wrong, forced, performative, and both partners will know it. Which is why the deepest answer to why couples stop touching and what it takes to truly restore it requires something more fundamental than a technique or a schedule. It requires a return to emotional honesty. The conversation that most couples in physical disconnection most need to have is not about touch at all. It is about everything that has gone unsaid, the hurts that were never named, the needs that were never voiced, the fears that have been driving the withdrawal from both sides. What do I actually need from you that I haven't known how to ask for? What have I done or failed to do that may have made you feel less safe being close to me? What is the most honest thing I can say about what is happening between us right now? These are terrifying conversations. They require more vulnerability than most people are comfortable with, especially in relationships where the safety for that vulnerability has eroded. But they are also the conversations that change everything. Because when two people can be truly honest with each other about their experience, when the emotional truth that has been living silently in the body finally gets to be spoken, something shifts. The nervous system that has been in protective withdrawal receives a signal it has been waiting for. A signal that says, it is safe to be here. You can open. You can reach. The person across from you is not the threat. They are the home. And from that place, the touch that returns is not a technique. It is not a practice. It is the natural, irresistible expression of two nervous systems that have finally found each other again. Let me bring this home with something I want you to sit with. The touch that has disappeared from your relationship did not leave because the love disappeared. It left because something in the emotional environment of the relationship made the nervous system, in its ancient, automatic, deeply wise way, decide that full openness was not currently safe. That is not a permanent state. That is a signal. And the most important thing I can tell you is this. The desire to be physically close to the person you love does not go away. It cannot go away. It is biological. It is fundamental. It is one of the deepest needs of the human nervous system. It goes underground. It goes quiet. It waits. It waits for safety, for honesty, for the moment when someone is brave enough to bridge the distance first. Not with a grand gesture, not with a perfectly calibrated strategy, but with the simplest and most courageous act available to any human being. Reach out and mean it. That is the whole answer. Underneath all the neuroscience and the attachment theory and the cultural analysis, that is what your body has been waiting for you to do. The distance between you and your partner is not as vast as it feels. It is measured not in years of disconnection or months of absence, but in the few inches of space between where you are and where they are. Cross it. Tonight. In whatever small way is true for you. Because love that is not expressed through the body will eventually struggle to survive in the heart alone. I'm Dr. Alex Morgan. This has been The Connection Theory. If this reached something in you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe for more. Psychology of love and human connection. And I'll see you in the next one.